a tremendous kavod to be here tonight on the Yurtzeit, my father Zatzal, and be making already my 11th siyum together with my chavrusa. Is a promise. This is a promise that I made to my father Zatzal a few months before he passed away. That I was going to take on the Amud Yomi and go through Shas. The last year of his life, as I mentioned during many of my siyumim, he made it a priority that he wanted his talmidim and he wanted the community to be kavei ha'itim and to finish Shas. Baruch Hashem, we're here with siyum number 11, Pesachtas Moed Katan. I can only imagine how proud, the pride that he must feel in Shemayim tonight, here with us. Also of significance is not just the siyum, but specifically we get to make a siyum on Moed Katan. The last parak of Moed Katan, we spent the last several weeks on, deals a lot with the halachas of mourning, the halachas of avelos, and the process by which the neshamas of tzaddikim, how they go into the next world. There's many psukim from Eicha. One of the psukim that we came across is Nafla Ateres Reshenu. We lost our crown, our splendor. Many of the events from the Rav Zatzal, my brother Shlomo puts a lot of work into the flyers and to the graphics. And most of the headlines, Nafla Ateres Reshenu. Shlomo HaMelech teaches Ateres, Zikanim, B'nai Banim, the crown, the splendor of the elder, of the Zikanim, of a Zakein, is B'nai Banim, is the children, the grandchildren. They're the ones that carry on the legacy and the splendor of the grandparents, are really based on how it gets carried on through the children. With this impact, how many homes did the Rav Zatzal uplift, was made from? And today we have the children of those homes, the yeshivas, especially in Queens, yeshivas where boys go to yeshiva, those are all his b'nai banim. How great the legacy, how great is the Atara Zikanim, how great is the Atara, when the impact of the b'nai banim continues and continues to multiply. The last several years, since dealing with the Rav Zatzal's passing, obviously everyone was moved in a certain way. However, the main comment that I get was, wow, it was so impactful, his life, and Baruch Hashem, we were able to be so close to him, but it was also very short. And my answer is always the same. It's always that maybe it was short in years, but we need to appreciate what we had, the greatness that we have, the bracha that we had to have him, at least in my case. For 25 years, I was able to be around my father Zatzal. It's an incredible bracha. It's something that I don't take for granted. Even 1 year, how many people just knew him for 1 year, changed their life. Their homes are changed. Their children are different. Their future is different. All for just a little bit of time that they spent with the Rav Zatzal, the Rosh Hashiva Zatzal in some cases. However, I would even argue and say that in fact, it really wasn't that short of a life. Depends what we look at life and how we view length of life. My father Zatzal had a Talmud named Simcha Yassiev. I was a little boy when he passed away, but he passed away at a very young age, at 28. He was 28 years old. Anyone who knew him would define him not just as a tzaddik, but almost as a malach. And I remember vividly, even when I was a young boy, what my father said over at his levaya. Just to put into perspective, he was I think at age 18 or 20. He wanted to go to yeshiva, wanted to learn by my father Zatzal, and his father didn't let. And he would go by the window whenever his father would come to the yeshiva, even in the winter, like Hillel, by the fire escape, not to miss any of the shiurim. And his father would b'shum life and not let him be in yeshiva. He would make sure to never miss a shiur. Also, I remember he was someone who never spoke a word of lashon hara. When he was sick toward the end of his life, he would call my father Zatzal with shilas, and it was even under his tremendous duress. He was makbid on halacha. Someone like this, from what I remember, even you could qualify him as a malach. And the Rav Zatzal got up at his levaya and said over b'shem Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, and he said, we give people a brachat arichas yamim v'shanim. A person should have long days and years. The Rav Zatzal asked, why is it important to have arichas yamim v'shanim, days and years? Imagine a person lives till 100 years and 10 days. Arichas shanim is what's most important. He has long years. Why is it important? He lives 100 years and 10 days. Why is the yamim so part of the bracha? The Rav Zatzal answered, because a person can have long years. He can have arichas shanim, but his days are empty. He doesn't have any yamim. The bracha is that a person should have arichas shanim through the yamim, through the rich days. And in this way, he really has arichas yamim. So the Rav Zatzal said about his Talmud, Simcha Yasiv, even though he was only 28 years old, but his days were rich. His days were rich, and therefore he essentially did have arichas shanim. This leads me to my next topic. The Rav Zatzal gave a whole shiur on the concept of what it means for a tzaddik to live out his days. And he spoke about how a tzaddik lives and dies very much the same way. Most people living and dying it's an obstacle. It's a very difficult period, a transition to go to the next world. He has regrets and different things. To a tzaddik, the tzaddik doesn't have these problems when he passes away. It's one and the same. Living and dying is the same. The pasuk says regarding Avram Avinu, when it came time for him to pass away, the pasuk says, "Vayigva, vayamas Avram b'seiva taiva." It's time for Avram to pass away. Vayamas Avram b'seiva taiva, and Avram passed away at the ripe old age. V'saveya, and he was very satisfied. So the Rav Zatzal quoted the Ramban. V'saveya, the tzaddik, it says v'saveya bayamim, that his days were satisfying. Svayayim, the day itself is satisfying. To the tzaddik, the day itself is where he accomplishes. He doesn't need extra things in his day to make his day rich, to make his day good. The tzaddik is davik to Hashem. He does his avodas Hashem, and the day itself is thus rich. The Rav Zatzal said over a pshat from the Sfas Emes, a beautiful pshat. Avram zaken ba bayamim. Avram got old. The simple explanation is ba bayamim, he got old. The Rav Zatzal brought from the Sfas Emes, Avram zaken ba bayamim, as we just mentioned, the tzaddik has his day. Ba bayamim, the tzaddik comes to Shemayim, ba bayamim, with his days. Further, we see this by Sarah as well. The Torah again repeats itself. Shnei Chai Sarah, these were the years of Sarah's life. So the beginning we know 100, like 27. They were related to one another. But why does the pasuk repeat it? It says Rashi to teach us Kulan Shavin L'Taiva. Kulan Shavin L'Taiva. They were all good years. So the question that the Rav Zatzal asked, were they all good years? We have the right to say on someone's life they were all good years. Many of Sarah's years were difficult years. She was in Akara and she had Avimelech, and she was on the go with Avram. Lech Lecha. How could we define that as good years? Kulan Shavin L'Taiva. Said the Rav Zatzal from Rav Zusha, Manipoli. Be'eneha shel Sarah, it was good years. The pasuk was speaking from her perspective. To her, everything that happened in life was Kol Mandav Rachman L'Tavavid, Gamzu L'Taiva. Every day was good, regardless if there was nisyanis or what we would say is difficult days. To her, they were Kulan Shavin L'Taiva. And this is the midah of the tzaddik, that the day itself is always good, is rich, Sva Yamim. Anyone who knew the Rav Zatzal, anyone who davened here in the shul, knew the slogan of our shul is it's all good. Everything was always good. The Rav went through difficult situations in his life, and he excelled this midah of Kulan Shavin L'Taiva, Kol Mandav Rachman L'Tavavid. It was always good, and in this way, it was Sva Yamim. It was rich in days, and in this way, I would say he really had Arichas Shanim, because his days were rich. What he was able to accomplish in what most would say would be a shortened life, he accomplished lifetimes in Harbatzas Torah, lifetimes in Chidushei Torah, in his writings, in his Gemilas Chasadim, in his Ahavas Yisrael, in what he was able to accomplish, what most people it would take lifetimes to accomplish. So he accomplished Shleimus. The very last speech that he gave during COVID, I think it was 4 days before he passed away, he spoke about that he doesn't have the answers to everything that was going on during COVID, but he did say that a person is obligated, that his learning, Torah makes, and I'll quote verbatim, Torah transforms a person to become an Adam Hashalem, to make a person wholesome, to make a person complete. The Rav Zatzal passed away, yes, maybe he was young in years, but he passed away with Shleimus. He accomplished his mission. He passed away in Adam Hashalem. It was Visaveya. It was satisfying. I want to share a short story with Ramesha, our Gabbai. Every single Shabbos, this concept of Sva Yamim, everything is good. A Rav of 10, 15 years, not every Shabbos is always good. Most of them here in the shul were beautiful, but some Shabbosim were maybe more difficult. And the Rav would turn after every single Shabbos. Matzah Shabbos, the first thing after Ma'ariv, he would turn to Ramesha's table and he would say, another beautiful Shabbos. Another beautiful Shabbos. Every Shabbos was beautiful to him, regardless if there was any difficulties. It was always beautiful. Every Shabbos in the shul was beautiful. That's how he looked at it. Kulan Shavin L'Taiva. They were all beautiful. That's his concept of Sva Yamim. And I would say it was really a long life, if this is how you look at life. If I would have to define the Rav Zatzal in one word that would encompass so much of his life that most people resonated with, it would be the concept of ahava, love. The Rav Zatzal broke down the word ahava into 3 parts. He gave a series of shiurim on this: ahavas Torah, ahavas Hashem, and ahavas Yisrael. I'd like to touch briefly and share a few stories about each one. First and foremost, any conversation about my father Zatzal, the Rav, has to start with his Ahavas Torah. He was defined by his Torah. He was a living Sefer Torah. It was his love for Torah, his midas, everything came from his Torah. It was pure. Obviously, his asmada, every free minute that he had, many know him that the last few years he was Isaac in the community. But I remember you were able to walk into his room 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and he had a pile of svarim, maybe 15, 20 high. He was writing his kedushin. You wouldn't even notice he would come in. The nighttime hours, his asmada was something unbelievable. When I picture the Rav Zatzal in his greatest moments, the pride, one I would say is at the front of when he was giving shiurim to his talmidim, the pride that he had, but also in his study late at night, and next to his table there was always piles and piles of svarim, or surrounded by svarim. The Rav Zatzal to Torah was like a fish in water. I would like to talk a little bit about his knowledge, his Yedias HaTorah, his vast knowledge, what kind of massive Talmud Chacham he was. Everyone knew that he learned every sefer. There was no this type or that type. Every kind of sefer he would learn. If it's Torah, it was good for him. In fact, I remember when we were children, we would go to a svarim store in Borough Park, Beagleizing. And he would always talk about Beagleizing. You know what's special about Beagleizing? Beagleizing has this svarim that no one else has before anyone else gets it. He would go there every day, right after yeshiva. He would take us, especially in the summer when we would go with him to yeshiva. And he would go look at all the new svarim. And I remember that those hot summer days, we were more interested in playing ball than spending our afternoons in Beagleizing Svarim store. My brother Yitzchak, he remembers that we used to have a special technique of how to get my father out of the Svarim store. Every time we would try to, pull his kapata and say, "Ta, we really have to leave. It's already, the game is starting, and we really want to play. We don't want to be here all afternoon." He would tell us, another 5 more minutes, another 5 more minutes. I have to just finish this. And he would pick out another sefer. And those 5 minutes added up to several hours some days. And eventually we came up with a master plan that there was a ladder that was able to roll across the svarim, the svarim shines, so you're able to reach the tall svarim, the svarim high up in the store. And we had a technique how we used to hang on the ladder and roll it across the whole store, until the point that Mr. Beagleizing had to physically throw us out of the store. And that was the only way to get him out of the Svarim store. My brother remembers. That's what it is. The Rav without Svarim was like a fish outside the sea. You had to literally figure out a way to get him out. Otherwise, I would like to speak for a moment about his Yedias HaTorah and the every type of sefer. Obviously, he came from an Ashkenaz background. He completed smicha in his 20s from Rav Libes. I just want to actually point out one thing that was written in his smicha from Rav Libes. Rav Libes writes that he completed the Fahar and Yedias, and his knowledge is vast, and he passed all the tests. But he also writes there that on top of any community that takes the Rav Zatzal to lead them, it's not just getting the knowledge of Torah, but it's also getting the spirit of Torah. So the Rav Zatzal learning was not just an intellectual pursuit, but as I mentioned previously, it makes somebody an Adam Hashalem. All his midas and how Azkarah he was, and his Ahavas Yisrael, his Ahavas Hashem, stemmed from his learning, his Torah. He mastered most areas of halacha before even the age of 30. Chatzkel Roth and Nida and Rabelsky and Rav Feinstein. However, the last several years, he was involved in the Bukharian community. His yeshiva was a Sephardi yeshiva. And every day after Shacharis, he would open, Halacha Seder was on Yalkut Yosef. He would open up the Yalkut Yosef, and whatever topic was on where he opened to, that's what shir was on that day. And I asked him once, I said, you have to prepare. The Yalkut Yosef is so big, and it's not like that was your upbringing. He tells me, no, I don't have to prepare. I open it, and wherever it is on that day, that's what halacha is on that day. Rav David Yosef Shlita, Rav Vadia's son, he would come a few times a year to America to visit Chazak, and he was learning with the Rav Zatzal, his father's psakim. He was going through them with him. And he turns to Rabbi Meirav, the head of Chazak, and he says, forget at his age, he's only 50 years old at the time. And he said, I never saw an Ashkenaz Rav who knows my father's psakim as well as Rav Walkin. On the other side, there was a Yid in our shul, Rabbi Gelb. He lives in Williamsburg. He's a Satmar Chassid. He bought a summer home up the block. 30-minute walk. He would walk in every Shabbos in the summer, even in the heat, and his shtreimel, and he would have to discuss the Divrei Yoel every week on the Parsha with the Rav Zatzal. And they would exchange a vart on Divrei Yoel from the Satmar Rebbe. One week he shares something that he saw from the Divrei Yoel on the Parsha, and the Rav Zatzal tells him, where did you see that? That's not in the Divrei Yoel. So he says, no, I saw it quoted. They quoted from the Divrei Yoel. So the Rav Zatzal told him, no, go back and see where the source of it is. It's not in the Divrei Yoel. He went back, and he came back a week later, and he says it was from the publications, the manuscripts that they published after the Satmar Rebbe passed away, but it wasn't included in the actual Divrei Yoel. The Rav was right, it was not in the Divrei Yoel. He says, you see, if it was in the Divrei Yoel, I would know if it's in the Divrei Yoel. The knowledge between Hasidic Svarim and Sephardi Svarim and everything in between, it didn't matter. To him, it was emes. If it was Torah, it was emes. It was good for him. Torah was all-encompassing. The second of the Ahavas was Ahavas Hashem. I'd like to spend a minute or two on his love for doing mitzvahs, his avodas Hashem. Rav Shalari Rosenberg shared a story at one of the Rav's Azkarah events, how one Sukkot morning he came a little bit early, and he saw the Rav coming downstairs with his lulav and his esrog. He was so happy. Shalai thought there was a simcha. A simcha happened in the family the night before. And he turns to the Rav and he says, Rav, what was the simcha? It looks like you had a simcha last night. And he turns to him and he goes, simcha, of course. I get to shake lulav and esrog. I just want to put into context how much effort that the Rav would put in to Sukkot morning, shaking lulav and esrog. It was not something he just woke up and he was excited to do lulav and esrog. It was that as well, but in fact, we would go on vacations to Vermont in the summer, to the mountains, and the Rav would bring a pile of Svarim on Arba Minim and all the different halachas. He would start preparing for Sukkot already in the summertime. He would go straight. Many people don't know this about the Rav. Those who are in the shul obviously know, but the Rav had tremendous talent in music and chazanis, and he would blow shofar. He would lane all the Megillas. Listening to him on Eicha, to lane Megillas Eicha, you would feel the loss of the Beis HaMikdash just listening to his Eicha. You would feel the story of Purim, just the way, besides for his beautiful voice that he would lane the Megillah, but the heart that he put into it, the way he sang it, you would feel the story of Purim. Shofar, he would blow like Kol Dema Madaka, a sweet still sound, to share a short story. Reb Shapsi Reitzik told me after the Rav passed away, the Rav was makbid that it should be, the call of the shofar should be very soft and sweet. And Shabsi told me he came to blow shofar by him to learn how to blow. And he was blowing very strong, powerful tekiyas. He said, Rav, this is good, no? And the Rav said, no. The shofar needs to be soft and sweet, that in the Shema and Rosh Hashanah, the Yiddish Shema Rosh Hashanah needs to hear the soft, sweet, broken cry of the shofar. It's going to resonate right away. He'll do tshuva. This is the way the Rav did mitzvahs. It was not just with a talent, but it was also with a hergish and a sensitivity to the Yiddish neshama. The Rav would blow shofar and daven Yom Nerayim. Matzei Ne'ilah, the last year of the Rav's life, I remember clearly he blew a Tekiah Gedolah that was the longest by far I've ever heard. He put in all his kaiches into the davening. Everybody in the shul after he finished Ne'ilah went to go say Kiddush Levana and then to go break the fast. I come back after Kiddush Levana, I broke the fast, and I see him still sitting by his seat. So I say, Tal, would you like to come upstairs? You could sit, but maybe just go upstairs and you could break your fast. He turns to me, he looks at me, his face was white. You could see the Kedusha on his face after Ne'ilah. And he says, Pinchas, you don't understand. I just gave Hashem everything I have. I have nothing left. I'm sitting here, I don't have any energy left. I just gave Hashem everything I have. This is the way he did mitzvahs. He put in B'chol levavecha, B'chol nafshecha, V'havtas Hashem Elokecha. This is how the Rav Zatzal did mitzvahs with everything that he had. And then lastly, the Rav's Ahavas Yisrael. Rav's legendary Ahavas Yisrael. If we be only discussing the Rav's Ahavas Yisrael, we'd be here for weeks, months, how legendary it was. And many of the things going on here in the shul, the chasadim that went on for people, just a few small anecdotes that I remember that brings out the Rav's legendary Ahavas Yisrael. I mentioned Rabbi Gelb from Satmar Chassid from Williamsburg. He happens to be a Kayin. We also had with us for many years Dr. Muchnik. Dr. Muchnik came from a more young Israel background. And one Birchas Kohanim, the Rav was makbid that his children would have to come under his talis every yontif. Even after Bar Mitzvah, during Birchas Kohanim, we would have to come under his talis. Birchas Kohanim on yontif, there was one year that was Rabbi Gelb, and he did the Satmar Niggin, and Dr. Muchnik did the Young Israel Niggin. And I remember hearing under the talis that the people were amused how the different Nigunim came together. But to the Rav Zatzal, I noticed on his time he was crying like a baby. And as soon as they finished Shalom, Birchas Kohanim, he turns to us, he takes off the talis, and he says, this is what it means, Habaycher Yisrael bi'ahava. This is Klal Yisrael. This is Ahavas Yisrael. This was the Rav's Ahavas Yisrael. The different factions of Klal Yisrael come together to bench Birchas Kohanim, Bi'ahava. One more story I would like to share from the Rav Zatzal. One of his Talmidim opened up a yeshiva in Queens, and the Rav was considered the Nasi of the yeshiva. They came to him with all the Das Torah questions, and one of the Rabbeim in the yeshiva did something that he deserved to be fired. It was clear, incontrovertible, that what he deserved wasn't going to be maintained on the staff in the yeshiva anymore. And they came to the Rosh Yeshiva, to the Rav Zatzal, to sign that they were going to fire him. And the Rav Zatzal said, first go to the other Rabbanim in Queens. Their sign-off, it's an easy psak halacha. And they all signed, and then they came back to the Rav to sign, and he refused to sign. And he said that the psak halacha was done. It was clear that the psak halacha that he was going to be fired. But he said, even so, I still don't want my name on this paper. He said, my name cannot be associated with the pain of another Yid's family. The family of this person, they didn't do anything, but they're going to suffer the pain, the consequences, and I don't want to have my name associated with that. So I'll ensure that the psak halacha gets done. I make sure the Rabbanim sign it. But my name, Aaron Walkin, cannot be signed on a paper which will cause another Yid's family pain. This was the legendary Ahavas Yisrael that he had. And the love that he had for every Yid. There were some people in the yeshiva that came just for the hug. There was a boy in the yeshiva that told me in Queens that he was in bed for 6 months. He had a depression. And he came every day just to get the hug of the Rav. There was no hour of the day that it was not accessible. I want to just wrap it up with the Rav's Mishaberach L'Chaylim, how legendary it was. In this book, the Rav Zatzal's V'yisam li Segula, he would make Mishaberach L'Chaylim by himself. Every week, he would rip out the newspapers of all the Chaylim lists and as many pictures of sick children. And he said, if it's there for people to daven, people like me, I'm the one who cares. He would make a Mishaberach L'Chaylim for them. The Gabi wasn't allowed to do it. He himself had to go up and do it. With this book, till today, we still make Mishaberach L'Chaylim with this book. He would cry like a baby up to Shabbos Hi Melizug. Tears were rolling down his cheeks when he would list the names of the Chaylim with so much fervor and so much heart. You saw how much he cared up to Shabbos Hi Melizug, and then he would try to stop crying. This is the love that he had for every Yid. We mentioned the Ateres Zikanim is only as great as the Bnei Banim. It's only as great as the Bnei Banim. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone in the shul, to thank also the children, my family, my siblings, for stepping up. The Bnei Banim, how much effort that we put in to the legacy. That's what makes the Atara great. The Ateres Zikanim and the shul, everyone continues the Shemel Teferes with Midas and Kavod Habrius and Yerushalayim. The legacy continues, it's alive and well. And in the community, for everyone who comes together. And lastly, to take this opportunity to thank my mother for everything that she's done. Yes, it was a royal crown that he wore, and a lot of accomplishments, as we mentioned, lifetimes of accomplishment in his svarim, in his teachings, in his impact on people. But the splendor and the grandeur really behind everything was my mother. They should be zaycha to see simchas in the family. It should be a schus for her. My bracha is that the Rav Zatzal davened for Klal Yisrael so much during his lifetime. As Reb Shapsi, the first text I got after the Rav passed away, Reb Shapsi texted me, he will surely continue upstairs the same way he davened downstairs, especially during this time. May he continue to be a Beilitz Yasher. May he continue to be a Beilitz Yasher for our family, the community, and all of Klal Yisrael during these difficult times. And may we be Zaycha to reunite with him, reunite with the Rav, and see him again with the coming of Mashiach B'mheira B'yameinu. Amen.